The dimly lit bar buzzed with the laughter and chatter of bikers gathered around their drinks, their rowdy energy filling every corner. In the midst of it all, a quiet man sat alone at the bar, nursing his drink in silence. His unassuming presence barely caught anyone's attention, until one of the bikers decided to have some fun at his expense. What started as playful teasing quickly escalated, the bikers eager to provoke a reaction. But the man remained calm, his gaze steady, his posture unnervingly composed. The bikers laughed louder, egging each other on, completely unaware of who they were dealing with. Because beneath the quiet exterior lay a story of grit, training, and discipline. He wasn't just any man. He was a former Special Forces operative. And as the tension built, it became clear they had no idea how dangerous the game they were playing truly was. The bikers, confident in their numbers and swagger, leaned in closer, their laughter echoing off the walls. One of them, a burly man with tattoos snaking up his arms, smirked and made a comment loud enough for everyone to hear. The quiet man didn't flinch, his calm demeanor unshaken, almost like he hadn't heard it at all. Curiosity flickered among a few onlookers who couldn't help but wonder why he wasn't reacting. Who just sits there while being openly mocked? But this wasn't the kind of man to waste words or energy on trivialities. His hands rested loosely on his glass, his mind calculating every movement in the room, every potential threat, every escape route. What the bikers couldn't see was the years of training that taught him patience, precision, and restraint. They thought they had the upper hand, but the atmosphere in the bar began to shift, subtly, ominously. One of the bikers, emboldened by the quiet man's lack of reaction, took a step closer. He tapped the man's shoulder, hard enough to be noticed, but not enough to provoke outright aggression. "Hey, pal, we're just having fun. You don't mind, do you?" he said with a grin that wasn't friendly at all. The man slowly turned his head, his eyes meeting the biker's. There was no anger in his gaze, no fear, just a calm, piercing stare that made the biker hesitate for a fraction of a second. But the hesitation passed, and the others laughed, mistaking the man's composure for weakness. Behind the bar, the bartender's hands froze mid-polish. He had seen trouble before, but this felt different. The tension wasn't coming from the bikers. It was radiating from the man they were taunting. He couldn't shake the feeling that these guys were playing with fire and didn't even know it. The leader of the group, a towering man with a leather vest and a scar running down his cheek, decided to take control. He walked up to the quiet man, his boots thudding against the wooden floor. "You got something to say, tough guy, or are you just gonna sit there like a statue?" His voice was sharp, meant to intimidate, and the room fell quieter as a few patrons shifted uneasily in their seats. The quiet man didn't respond. He calmly took a sip from his glass, his movements deliberate, his face unreadable. The silence dragged on, and the leader's smirk began to falter. Frustrated, he reached out and grabbed the man's shoulder. For the first time, the quiet man moved. His hand shot up, not in aggression, but with a firm grip that stopped the biker in his tracks. His voice, low and steady, finally broke the silence. "You sure you want to do this?" That single question sent a ripple through the room. The bikers glanced at each other, their bravado flickering as something in the man's tone hinted at a past they couldn't begin to understand. The tension was electric, the bar now holding its breath for what would come next. The leader froze, his hand hovering mid-air, locked in the quiet man's unrelenting grip. The bar was deathly silent now, every eye fixed on the scene. For a moment, it seemed like the biker might back down, but then he barked a laugh, trying to shake off the tension. "You think you're some kind of tough guy, huh? Maybe you've got a few moves, but you're in my bar now." Before anyone could respond, the sound of the front door swinging open interrupted the standoff. A man in a crisp jacket walked in, his presence immediately commanding attention. He scanned the room and zeroed in on the quiet man. "Captain," he said, his voice respectful yet urgent. "We've got a situation. Your expertise is needed." The quiet man released the biker's hand without a word, his calm expression unchanged. The bikers exchanged confused looks, their leader's cocky demeanor faltering. "Captain," one of them muttered under his breath. The bartender's face paled as if pieces of a puzzle were falling into place. He knew now that the quiet man wasn't just any soldier. He was someone who had led missions, faced life or death situations, and carried a level of authority far beyond what anyone in this room could fathom. The stakes had shifted, and suddenly everyone realized they were in over their heads. The quiet man stood, his movements calm yet purposeful, and nodded to the man in the jacket. "Give me 5 minutes," he said, his voice steady but commanding. He turned back to the bikers, who now watched him with a mix of confusion and unease. The leader crossed his arms, trying to reclaim control. "What kind of game are you playing here?" he growled, though his voice lacked the confidence it held earlier. "No game," the quiet man replied. He leaned in just enough for his voice to carry without raising it. "But if you're smart, you'll leave this alone. You don't want to know what happens next." Something in his tone hit differently this time, cold, sharp, and final. The leader's bravado wavered, and the other bikers shuffled awkwardly, no longer eager to push their luck. As the quiet man turned to leave, the bartender broke the silence. "Wait," he called, his voice shaking slightly. "Who are you?" The man paused at the door, his back to the room. "Just someone who knows how to finish what others start," he said without looking back, and then he was gone. The biker stood frozen, unsure whether to feel relief or dread. But as the bartender caught the faintest glimpse of an insignia on the man's jacket, a symbol tied to elite military operations, he realized they'd just narrowly avoided the kind of trouble no one walked away from. The bar slowly returned to a low murmur as the quiet man disappeared into the night. The bikers, now subdued, exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier bravado completely gone. The leader grabbed his drink, but didn't take a sip, staring blankly ahead, as if replaying the encounter in his mind. The bartender shook his head, his hands trembling as he picked up a glass. "You guys got lucky tonight," he muttered under his breath, his tone a mix of relief and disbelief. "That wasn't a man you mess with. That was someone trained to handle things you can't even imagine." The bikers didn't respond, their silence speaking volumes. The weight of what almost happened hung heavy in the air, a lesson none of them would forget. Outside, the quiet man slipped into an unmarked vehicle. His work wasn't done yet, but he didn't need to look back. He knew the message had been delivered.